Has everybody been let in, Will?
Yep, they're in, and I think probably just getting all set up. So there you go, Mary.
Okay, great. Hello, I was going to say good morning, and then I wasn't sure whether it was morning or afternoon since we're right at noon. So I'll just say hello. Welcome. We're so glad that you're joining us today. My name is Mary Hildebrand. I am a faculty member at the Bush School at Texas A&M, and I'm involved at the Center for Nonprofits and Philanthropy. And that is the center that is sponsoring this series of webinars that this session is part of. We started this series earlier this year in connection with the beginning of COVID and everyone shutting down and wanting, sort of asking ourselves, how can we make some kind of contribution to people who are dealing with some of the challenges? And so we started having webinars, first really dealing a little bit with the COVID-19 situation, and then broadening because we realized that we did have a lot of people interested in issues. So we've been covering some sessions that really are a little bit skill oriented or dealing with some of the direct issues that nonprofits deal with, and some that are a little broader and get at some of the issues that are present in the region. So I want to just say one word about, if I can get my slide to move, the Center for Nonprofits and Philanthropy. We are here at the Bush School of Government and Public Service. And I would just mention, this slide gives you quite a bit of information, and it's something you can look at later on our website. I would just mention our mission, that the CNP supports a vibrant nonprofit and philanthropic center in Texas and beyond through high quality research, professional outreach, and engaged learning. So really what we're doing with these webinars is a way of trying to fulfill our mission in communicating with the community. We have, our topic today is on philanthropy in the US-Mexico border regions, myths and realities. And I think this is a very nice follow-on to the session that we had last week that was on fundraising in the Latino community with a couple of people who had a lot of experience in that area. So I think we're very privileged today to be able to welcome Andy Carey as our speaker. He is the executive director of the US-Mexico Border Philanthropy Partnership, and that the BPP is a network of organizations in both Mexico and the United States that really work together to support philanthropic activity and to make a difference in border communities to try to improve the quality of life in border communities. And I will let Andy say more about that. Just a couple more words about Andy. He does teach at University of San Diego on nonprofit issues. And one thing that I think is especially worth noting is that he's been recognized by the Mexican Ministry of Foreign Relations for his commitment and service to the Mexican American community, the community of Mexicans who are in the United States. And that's an important contribution that I think is relevant for our topic today. So I, again, welcome. I think we are very privileged to have this topic. College Station may not be right at the border. We may not be in the border as it's narrow, or the border region as it's narrowly defined sometimes, but we are very much part of the border. I mean, Texas is a border state. And so understanding what the situation is with nonprofits in the border region is relevant for all of us, I think. So I'm going to take down my slides and allow Andy to put his up. Andy, thank you so much for being with us. And let me just say, Andy's going to give his presentation, and then there will be some time for questions afterwards. If you have questions that you think about along the way and want to put them in the chat, we will be tracking those, but dealing with them afterwards. So Andy, I'm going to turn the floor to you. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much, Mary, for that kind introduction. And we are excited to be with the Bush School today. I'd like to thank Will Brown and Mary Hildebrand for this kind invitation. And we are excited to talk with you and today's participants about philanthropy in the U.S.-Mexico border region, and also explore some myths and realities. You know, one of the things that we all know is that the border has been in the news quite a bit over the last several years. And as in many things, the narrative about our region sometimes gets hijacked. And so it's important for those of us that live in this region to tell our story and to tell the true narrative about what's really happening in this region. And so we're excited to join the Bush School today. On a personal note, I'm deeply honored to get to be with the Bush School today. I'm a huge fan of former President George H.W. Bush. As a young man at 18 years of age, I was studying abroad in the Universidad Complutense in Madrid, Spain, and I had to register to vote for the first time. And I went over to the embassy in Madrid, Spain, and registered to vote, and I got my ballot, and I was enthralled with watching the political process from overseas and through a foreign narrative and through the media of Europe to see how our country was viewed. And I cast my first ballot for President Bush. I've read all of his books. His commitment to public service, being a member of the greatest generation, I think speaks volumes, perhaps because he and my father were the same age. But nevertheless, there was just such a commitment to public service, and there was a dignity about him as it related to public service that all of us here on this conversation today get to share in, and he's left an incredible legacy. So thank you, Will and Mary, for this opportunity to join you and your audience today. The U.S.-Mexico Border Philanthropy Partnership, in my screen, is not advancing to the next slide. So we're having a technical difficulty, Mary.
Well, I find that the arrows don't work, but the trackpad works. I don't know what clicking the trackpad, does that work?
That works.
Okay.
So our organization supports a network of 336 organizations, including the Bush School. We have a very proud partnership with the Bush School, and we look forward to doing more with you. And this network of organizations are building prosperity through leadership, collaboration, and philanthropy along and across the U.S.-Mexico border region. Some quick facts about who we are and what we do and how we do it. Our organization was started in September of 2008. We existed 6 years prior through a funder collaborative started by the Ford Foundation, the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, the Kellogg Foundation, the Gonzalo Rio Ronte Foundation, the Houston Endowment, not far from all of you. During that 6-year period of time, it was a capacity building initiative limited to just the participation of 18 border region community foundations. At that time, Susan Beresford, the president of the Ford Foundation, viewed the community foundation as a community pillar to promote philanthropy and change and opportunity for the most vulnerable amongst us. So during that period of time, the 18 border region community foundations from both sides participated in capacity building to grow their endowments, to grow their board and staff, knowledge of the sector and engagement to really have a greater impact in our region. After the successful 6-year period, it was determined by the participants that the work of the Border Philanthropy Partnership should continue. And that's when they launched a national search and found a much younger Andy Carey in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I relocated to San Diego, and that was now 11 years ago, where we've been able to build up this organization. So we've grown from the original 18 border community foundations to a network of over 336 members, which now includes academia, business and corporate partners, government agencies, nonprofit organizations, and foundations. And originally that was controversial because the community foundations thought by letting in nonprofits and other agencies that they would simply ask them for money. And I shared with the community foundations that since they were in the business of giving money away, it shouldn't be a problem. And so we've been able to find a way to allow our government and academic partners to help inform our work, our business and corporate partners and foundations help fund our work, and our nonprofit partners help us carry it out. We have a 12-member board of directors from both sides of the border. We actually, our president serves for a period up to 2 years, and we switch and alternate between the countries. So currently, our board chair is Alyssa de la Vara, who's the chief community officer for the Arizona Community Foundation, and she will be followed by our colleague from Mexico, Rosa del Carmen Montaño Fibres, who is the executive director of a family and business foundation located in Mexicali, Baja California, called Cadenas de Ayuda para Mexico. It's just an extraordinary organization providing very critical support services to Baja California. Our annual budget is about $650,000. We have a staff team, 6.5 people. We're small and mighty, but just having a great time. One of the services we provide is we are legally incorporated on both sides of the border, as we can be fiscal agent for our members. We have a huge group of people from the United States seeking to make charitable contributions in Mexico. And likewise, we have a huge group of people from Mexico looking to make charitable contributions into the United States. And as we are legally incorporated in both countries, we can provide the tax receipt for them to facilitate those supports. And those supports support environmental initiatives, public policy advocacy, child services, public health, education, and other areas. During our 12-year history, we've been providing education and training support for over 16,000 board and staff leaders. We're very proud of the work that our team and partners have been able to help us deliver in providing critical education, training, coaching, and technical assistance, helping organizations be better stewards of their limited resources, teaching them new ways to tell their story to help bring more resources into our region. As fiscal agent, we've helped secure additional funds for our region, and to date, it's over $5 million. Funds from both the federal governments of the United States and Mexico, whether it be from USAID or the Ministry of Health in Mexico, but bringing critical dollars into our region to help support philanthropy and to help support families and communities where we are most vulnerable. Every 15 days, our organization produces a newsletter. It actually just went out today. Goes out in Spanish and English. It's called the Border Buzz, or the Eco Fronterizo. And this is part of our strategy to highlight our work, as well as to work on the narrative that I mentioned in the first slide. You know, so much about what happens in our region is controlled by Mexico City or Washington, D.C. And that's not a political statement in the year of 2020. This is a historical situation that's been going on for hundreds of years, that the border region is very tightly controlled by the federal governments of each country. Since 2008, it seems like we've been in perpetual crisis in the border region. We first were challenged with the migrant groups coming out of Central America, Southern Mexico, and Haiti and other places. And we were truly unprepared, as well as for a change in the American government's response. Historically, people seeking asylum, political asylum, has been granted. And one of the changes in the Trump administration for the region has been to adjust the rules related for seeking asylum. And what that did is it created a huge challenge, a political crisis, a diplomatic crisis, a humanitarian crisis for our region that we were truly unprepared for. Because if you think of how our systems in this country were challenged by the number of people, migrants sleeping in the streets, courthouses being converted to shelters, the need for attorneys for representation in asylum cases for legal entry. Imagine a country that's still in development like Mexico, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, but they don't have the resources like the United States of America does to respond to this, and it created absolute havoc. And so the Border Philanthropy Partnership answered part of that call, and we secured over $1.5 million to help provide immediate relief, food, shelter, clothing, access to jobs, health services, but also legal relief and other supports, as well as public policy advocacy to convince and to appeal to the United States of America that we not lose our humanity in this process. There are several myths about our region, and I want to highlight this certainly isn't the only list, or certainly not just the top 10 list, but these are some of the more frequent ones that come up. That the border is out of control, that a border wall is going to stem the tide of an opiate epidemic, that border enforcement is not curtailing illegal crossings, that terrorist groups are exploiting a porous border, that Mexico's border laws are strong and ours are weak, that building more walls will prevent drug trafficking, that more immigrants are illegally crossing the border, that migrants are attracted to the United States because of generous public benefits, that undocumented immigrants are not paying taxes, and finally, the last one I'll share is that low-skilled immigrants are stealing our jobs. These are some of the more famous myths, and not a one of them is true. And I say this from somebody who's lived and worked in this region for nearly 30 years. The border is not out of control. The border wall extends to over 700 miles. Here in San Diego and in parts of Arizona and in parts of Texas, there's actually multiple barriers in single stretches. In San Diego, we actually have a triple fence. There are areas of the borderlands that you saw in the map I put out where putting in an infrastructure is simply impossible. You know, the Rio Grande River is not going to allow a border wall to be put right in the middle of it. And so there are some significant challenges. A lot of this gets political. People are looking for points to score cheap political points against the opposition. But the border is more secure now than it has ever been. When you think of the number of agents working to support here in the borderlands, when you think of the Department of Homeland Security, we actually have agents that wear blue uniforms and green uniforms. The Border Patrol agents actually wear the green ones. And we have some 24,000 Border Patrol agents. And if you think of the El Paso sector, talking about an area of the state of Texas, the El Paso sector has some 2,500 agents assigned to it. And El Paso is the safest community in the United States. If you look up crime statistics, El Paso is going to be one of the safest cities. Well, during the year of study by a program with USAID and the Wilson Institute, they actually looked at the number of apprehensions in the El Paso sector. And there was about 2,400 apprehensions that year. Well, that's about one apprehension per agent in a year's time. So that's some significant policy that needs to be revisited. They talk about where a lot of new wall construction is happening now. It's not new coverage for the borderlands. We're not increasing the wall in the 700-mile region. We're still at about 700 miles. What is happening is the landing pads that were put in during the Clinton administration from the Iraq War and parts of the Vietnam War. They were landing pads. They're actually numbered and they're wearing out and they have holes in them. And so a lot of the new wall construction that is happening is actually replacement wall of the wall that already exists. You know, on September 11th, 2001, the border was shut down between the United States and Mexico. And people say, well, terrorist groups are coming across a porous border. Well, there's not a shred of evidence to this day that a single terrorist has come across the Mexican border. But in fact, with no disrespect to our friends in Canada, some of the terrorists that came into the United States on September 11th actually did enter the country from Canada, but we're not certainly looking to build a wall between the United States and Canada, nor do I want us to. But I just put those out there. More immigrants are illegally crossing the borders. There certainly are people coming here, but they're not looking to steal our jobs or to not pay taxes. These people actually do pay taxes. They pay rent, which covers property taxes. They pay sales taxes. And actually, if you look at all the economic studies that have been done, you'll see that they actually are paying to cover the costs of them to be here. What we have to figure out as a country is to get it into the right buckets so that we can allocate it better and deal with it. You know, low-skilled immigrants are not taking American jobs. They're taking the jobs that Americans don't want to do. Here in the state of California, we have a huge need for migrant workers working in our agricultural fields. And these are heroes. These are people that are coming into our country and they are putting in exhausting hours. You know, in a 24-hour day, they're working 15 hours in the field, enduring significant wait times to come back and forth across the border, which can go, right now, they're at 4 to 5 hours. So if they're working in the fields for 15 hours and they're spending 4 to 5 hours going back and forth across the border, we're now at 20 hours of a day, which leaves them 4 hours left in the day to be a human being, to be a mom or a dad or a brother or a sister, to get some rest, to study, to eat, to shower, to just be a human being. And so these are very, very difficult situations, and we need to be better informed about how some of these myths are not our reality. There are 35 million Mexican nationals that reside in the United States. What I want to talk about here is why the US-Mexico relationship is so important. With 35 million Mexican nationals living in the United States, this makes Mexico an even more important partner to our country. Mexico, more than any other country in the world, has the most diplomatic outposts across our country, with over 50 consulates and embassies across our country. The embassy obviously is in Washington, D.C., and in the great state of Texas, there are 14 consulates across Texas. We have about 11 in the state of California. In the United States, we are an important diplomatic partner for Mexico, with 11 American diplomatic posts across their country, with over 1 million of our citizens residing in Mexico. So we are joined at the hip. Economically, over 5 million American jobs in Illinois, in Indiana, in Texas, in Oklahoma, in Michigan, in New York, depend on trade with Mexico. In over 26 of our American states, more than half have Mexico as their top trade partner. Additionally, we have 1.2 million people in the borderlands that are crossing the border every day. They come for many reasons. We also have over $1 billion in trade going back and forth across the border every day. And here, our population in the borderlands, we have over 15 million people on both sides of the border living in what we call the US-Mexico border region. And about 40% of that actually lives in the San Diego-Tijuana region. One of the most important realities to consider is why people are crossing. So if you look at this map, and these are critical ports of entry, but every day people are crossing to come to work, to study, to shop, to dine, to visit family, to attend religious services, to seek medical care, and obviously for tourism. One of the biggest benefits of the US-Mexico relationship, and actually this impacts communities in the developing world all over the globe, and that's the issue of remittances. A remittance is when somebody from the diaspora community is working and saving money to send back to their community of origin. And the remittance between the United States and Mexico is very, very important to the Mexican economy. Mexico has received $3.53 billion in remittances since July, most of it coming from the US, which is a 7% increase over the same month in 2019. And this information comes from the Mexican Bay. I said since July. In the month of July is what I meant to say, that they actually received that amount of remittance. And remittance is a very important form of philanthropy. This is families sending money to help provide support to their own family. And historically, Mexico worked very hard through forming hometown associations that would be community organized groups where they would register themselves before the Mexican consulate. And these, in Spanish, it's called a Clube de Oriundos. In these Clubes de Oriundos, the hometown associations would actually raise money or donate money, and they would send it into Mexico. And the Mexican government, through the Ceresol, the Ministry of Social Development, had a program called the 3x1, the 3-to-1 campaign, where the Mexican government, the federal level, the state level, and the local level would match the funds that come into Mexico to help spur an investment, particularly in community development. In the area of farm workers, here you can see a picture of the people making an incredible impact working in our fields. If anybody has had the opportunity to have a salad or eat strawberries, you can see the incredible work that these people are doing. And this actually started in World War II through the Bracero program, where we actually invited, when we sent our young men off to war, we needed help in our country, and Mexico answered that call. And through the Bracero program, it allowed migrant workers to come northward and to actually work in our country for the benefit of the rest of the globe. The issue of immigration gets very controversial around the world because people think that people are just ramming into our country. But it's important in this conversation today to actually put out some facts. Over 1 million people are coming into the United States each year. And in 2018, when this was tallied by Pew Research, almost 150,000 of those people came into this country from China. Almost 130,000 came in from India, followed by Mexico with 120,000 people. And then the Philippines, the next level of group, with 46,000 people. And you can see where we have the 20 largest metropolitan areas with the largest number of immigrants across the sea. And you can see in Dallas and Houston, you have two great large communities. But what you will also see is that, look in the border region. Other than San Diego, the border region really is not one of them. So people say the border is out of control with immigrants clamoring to come across, and that simply is not true. New immigrant arrivals have fallen. And it's also important to recognize that about 80% of the migrants that have come into this country and that are still here, for the 12 million people that are here in an undocumented capacity, you'll know that about 80% of them are students that came here and overstayed their visa. So it's not an issue of people jumping across the fence or coming in just to be here illegally. Today we're talking about philanthropy, and it's important to share that philanthropy is certainly alive and well in both countries. But the size and scope of philanthropy between the United States and Mexico is hugely different. Here in the United States, we have over 86,000 grant-making foundations and about 1.5 million nonprofit organizations. Whereas in Mexico, there's 313 grant-making foundations and about 47,000 Mexican nonprofit organizations. We did a quick study in preparation for today, and we did a study on College Station. So when you look at the number of nonprofits right there in College Station, Texas, there's 1,361, and you have 80 grant-making foundations, 80. So the Mexican, in all of Mexico, they have 300. So they have you're at 80, they're at 300. But imagine you only have to worry about College Station, and they have to worry about the entire country. Right now in the United States, we are in the midst of a pandemic. As we all know, we're all working from home. We're all working from our kitchen tables or our dining room tables or our bedrooms. Or if you're lucky enough with not a lot of kids, I have 5 kids. I don't have a home office, so I'm here out of my bedroom. So people across the country are doing all that they can to respond to COVID. And philanthropy has certainly answered the call. In community foundations alone across the United States, there's 700 community foundations across the United States. Collectively, they have secured over $1 billion to respond to COVID-19 for families and communities. And we're very proud today to share that here in the borderlands, our member network has secured 10% of that. Over $120 million has been raised by American foundations in the US-Mexico borderlands, and we're very proud of their effort. Here in San Diego, where I live, the San Diego Community Foundation has secured over $50 million for their community response fund providing incredible services. The Arizona Community Foundation, based in Phoenix, with affiliates across the entire state, they've secured over $46 million. And one of the things they're doing that's very collaborative, as well as San Diego Foundation, is they're both collaborating with state and local governments to help disperse relief grants for small businesses. In El Paso, they've come up with programs to support rent, people that can't cover their rent. They've also are investing heavily in supporting small businesses, waiters and waitresses that have lost their income, providing PPE. They've actually launched several collaborative efforts between the Paso del Norte Health Foundation, the El Paso Community Foundation, with their partner organizations in Mexico at Pechac and Frontera Norte, to actually launch funds to provide funds to get more personal protection equipment. The Santa Fe Community Foundation, the community foundations for Southern Arizona and Southern New Mexico have done remarkable work, raising about $2 million each to help bring critical support to keep our nonprofit sector alive. And the Conalma Health Foundation, based in New Mexico, has just done a remarkable job working with the Kellogg Foundation to create a fund to support the migrant population. Across the whole U.S.-Mexico borderlands, you can see the incredible regional response that is happening. These foundations, San Diego Grantmakers, it's a network of foundations here in our region. They are doing incredible work around public policy advocacy. Alliance Healthcare Foundation is setting up a sister foundation to work and support over in Calexico at the map on the left-hand side. Across the whole region, these organizations have just done heroic work. And in Mexico, they've done critical work to bring in PPE to support the nonprofit sector, just doing phenomenal work to grow and support philanthropy across the region. But as I've shared just a moment ago, the 4 US states in the borderlands, California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, have raised 10% of all the funds secured across the COVID relief fund across the United States. What are we investing in? During COVID-19, these are the areas where the most help is gone. We're helping nonprofits deliver food to the hungry. We're providing economic relief to the unemployed. We're providing medical equipment to first responders. That one is very personal to me because my wife is a clinical laboratory specialist here in San Diego working at a public hospital. And she actually had to sign a release to her employer because they can't provide her personal protection equipment as a hospital employee. She has to bring her own. And if that is happening in San Diego County, one of the most wealthy areas of the world, how is this possible that this isn't a more dire situation for more marginalized communities in the borderlands as we go across California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas? If it's a problem in San Diego, it must be absolutely devastating to these other marginalized communities as well as in Mexico. We're also providing daycare for essential workers, grants to small businesses in jeopardy of closure, and other needs that organizations have identified along the region. One of our partners is the International Community Foundation, and I'm specifically highlighting them today because they solely exist to donate resources into Mexico and other countries of Latin America. And to date, they've secured over $5 million in resources that they have regranted into Mexico for personal protection equipment, direct grants to nonprofits, setting up incredible relief, supporting food security initiatives, public health education campaigns, and many other issues. What has our organization been doing? As I've mentioned previously, we provide fiscal agency. So we're helping several of our members secure donations from donors across the United States that they want to send into Mexico, but because of the international obligations, we're able to help carry that burden for them. And we do all the Patriot Act compliances and the Ley de Antilavado on the Mexican side of the border to help ensure that these charitable donations are handled properly. We're facilitating in-kind gifts. We're sharing information about the border in our biweekly newsletters in English and Spanish. We're sharing information about how people can engage and support. They can serve on boards of directors. They can make in-kind gifts. They can make charitable contributions. And what they're asking us is they say, Andy, we want to make a difference. We want to get involved, but we don't know who to help. And so we're able to leverage our 336 member network and say, help this group, help this group. And that has been very successful. I also want to give a shout out to the federal government of Mexico, and I'm in no mean the presidents, and I'm not being political, but I'm talking about the institution of the government of Mexico, just like we're talking about the institution of the government of the United States. But Mexico has a program through their Institute of Mexicans Living Abroad called the IME, the Instituto para los Mexicanos en el Exterior, where through their consular network, they have health and wellness advocacy programs in each of their consulates. And they provide access to information, flu shots, cancer screens, information about where someone can go for affordable health services or free health services. And so they work with community partners. And in San Diego, that partner is the Border Philanthropy Partnership. But we also work closely with the Border Health Commission, both the US and Mexico sections, to be that community partner for them as they do national projects. So we're helping the Mexican government provide health and wellness services and resources and information to those 35 million Mexican nationals residing across the United States. We can also help secure financial resources and community partners to expand outreach to migrant communities. And why is this important? A partnership with government sometimes can be criticized, but it is critically important in dealing with international issues. And it's important here because with all the confusion and the myths and realities around immigration and what's true and what isn't true, there's a huge mistrust that is developed. And that huge mistrust is making it difficult for the Mexican diplomats to provide access to information. And so when we talk about a safe zone, working with the Mexican consulates is critically important because the consulate is considered a safe zone, which means immigration authorities cannot interfere with the Mexican government taking care of its people in this country, whether they're here appropriately or not, meaning are they here with proper documentation or not. And so even when they do remote consulate activities in churches and community centers or schools across our country, they become safe zones. And so it allows us to provide critical support to those communities. Here in San Diego alone, we're taking care of over 2,000 people a month through this Ventanilla de Salud program. And it's just an amazing opportunity. And since the program started across the country over 20 years ago, over 5 million Mexican nationals have been cared for during that time. Here you can see some photos that we did recently. We sent 6 semi-truck loads full of relief supplies. The American Red Cross had a leftover supply of materials and resources that they had to respond to the humanitarian crisis with the migrants here in the borderlands that started in 2018. So the United States-Mexico Border Philanthropy Partnership took possession of 5,540 blankets, over 7,000 towels, over 30,000 portable cots, and over 9,000 personal hygiene kits with a value of nearly $360,000. And we took these resources into Mexico to set up temporary relief COVID testing sites, migrant shelter support, community supports, working with Cruz Roja in Tijuana and Cadenas de Ayuda in Mexicali, supporting Tijuana, Tecate, Mexicali, Ensenada, and Rosarito. So much needs to happen to make these efforts possible. And one of the things I want to share with the audience today is the importance of cross-border collaboration. And I'm setting up 3 examples here of successful cross-border collaborations between public, private, and philanthropic sectors. And I know we're a nonprofit, but we also have academic partners here today. Government officials have signed on. The Bush School was actually started by a former president of our country. And he is somebody who absolutely understood the importance of cross-border collaboration as well as public, private, and philanthropic partnership. With our organization, working with the US-Mexico Border Health Commission, the Center for Disease Control, the World Health Organization, Pan American Health Organizations, we are providing a venue in our offices in San Diego, and we've been doing this now for 6 years, to allow and to facilitate regional planning for infectious disease. This is important because, as you all know, Congress gets upset sometimes when a government agency may end up doing a meeting or a training at a hotel that is viewed to be a little too exotic or a little too expensive. And so they respond by shutting off the budgets for these events to actually happen. And so that's where a partnership can come in, because through the Border Philanthropy Partnership, we're actually providing the venue, the lunches, the meals to allow these people to actually do their job. And during a COVID-19 pandemic, this is more important now than ever. Separately, we're working with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the City of San Diego, and local nonprofits for a Tijuana River binational cleanup. I actually serve on the National Advisory Committee for the Environmental Protection Agency, and $300 million has been secured by the federal government to actually finally clean up the Tijuana River Valley that has been polluting Tijuana and San Diego now for decades. And this is finally going to happen. But this is possible because the governments of US and Mexico, the communities of San Diego and Tijuana, nonprofit organizations, foundations are coming together to put together the resources to finally make it happen. And in the great state of Texas, every year, the US-Mexico Border Health Symposium is held. This is where members of the executive and legislative branches of the US government, officials from both the Mexican governments at local, regional, and national levels come together, as well as health officials and nonprofit organizations. And they're working together collectively to improve access to healthcare services in the binational region and across our country. So these are three real life situations where when we decide to come together and collaborate and bring our strengths and weaknesses together, we can absolutely make the world possible. And this is what the mission is of the Border Philanthropy Partnership. It's why the Bush School exists for public policy. It's what President Bush envisioned when he set up the 1,000 Points of Light. It's why when he was elected president, the first meeting he held was with the Prime Minister of Canada and the President of Mexico. President George H.W. Bush, as president-elect, organized a meeting between then President Carlos Salinas of Mexico and the Prime Minister Brian Mulroney of Canada to engage how our three countries can work together collaboratively for the greater good of all three countries. And this is the work that stands before us. And so that was a long time ago in 1988. And here we are in the year 2020. So it was over 30 years ago. It's just an amazing time to be involved in this work and to be a part of a solution. And so I hope this presentation of these realities and opportunities helps dispel some of the things that people think about what's really going on at the border, what they think is really going on at the border with what is actually going on the border. And I would encourage everybody here present, before you just listen to the news pundits in the evening about how the border's out of control, I would encourage you to remember this conversation that we had today and to encourage you to reach out and to talk to the people that actually live there, that work it. I've been doing this work for nearly 30 years. I've traveled all over the world. I travel in Mexico frequently. I've never once been detained. I've never been arrested. They've never tried to take me hostage. I've never been beat up. One time I was robbed, and it was in New Jersey. No disrespect to the people of the great state of New Jersey and the Garden State, but if you're not engaging with people you shouldn't be engaging with, you're not going to have any problem. And it is safe to travel. It is safe to engage. Mexico is our friend or our partner, and they're our neighbor. And this has just been a wonderful opportunity today. I want to reiterate my thanks to Bill and to Mary for this invitation. And I look forward to having additional conversations with the Bush School moving forward.
Thank you so much, Andy, for that very informative and interesting talk about sort of the more general situation at the border and also what's being done, what the nonprofit community is doing, and in particular, what the Border Philanthropy Partnership is doing. And I have to say that it's a very impressive picture, actually, of a very large scale of activity and assistance. And that's really good to hear. So I'm hoping that there will be some questions. I know that Will is tracking if people put some questions on the chat. I guess one question I would ask, thinking about the COVID situation, obviously a lot of kinds of assistance are being provided. What are some of the priorities right now? What do you see in terms of responding to COVID in the border region? What are the current priorities and where are there needs that are maybe being missed or not addressed sufficiently?
Sure. We have a huge problem related to public policy advocacy on the part of the national governments of both countries. Neither president is willing to recognize, and I'm being sincere, I'm not being political, the extent of the problem. Neither of them are promoting what the public health officials are suggesting: social distancing, wearing of masks, washing of hands. Both officials, both presidents have talked about how this will go away. And it's not helpful because people listen to them, and it's actually encouraging further spread. We need both countries to do all that they can to increase access to personal protection equipment. There still is not enough. And people say, oh, there's plenty. Well, if you work or you are the president of the United States, as we all saw this last week, you have a helicopter that can whisk you off for the best medical care possible, and it's funded by the American people. The same would be true of the president of Mexico. But the people in our countries need access to testing. They need, there's still a dearth of need for the swabs, for the actual test kits. We need to complete the tracing. More people need to be tested. And yes, with more tests, we're probably going to get more positives, but we need to know what we're looking at. And we should start to address this from what are we really dealing with as to what we think we're dealing with. And we also need to listen to the health professionals. The Border Health Commission has done a remarkable job. Many municipal leaders have done a fabulous job. I think state government leaders have done a terrific job. The federal governments have the opportunity to do a good job if they'd stop playing politics with the lives of their people.
Thank you for that. Lots still to be done, obviously, in the border region as well as elsewhere.
Yes.
Are there questions that people can raise their hands? I can actually, I think, see if people are wanting to get in verbally. And I know one question was posed that that is something that I really wanted to ask, and I'll go ahead and ask it. I think Deborah Kerr has mentioned this. How can we support the partnership through the academic center? We want to engage. We are academics. How can we make a difference in the work of the Border Philanthropy Partnership?
Well, you're already making a difference by being a member and being supportive and by inviting me here today. That's wonderful, and we appreciate that very much. You've been part of us since you joined us at our event held in San Antonio, and we look forward to doing more events in Texas and along the border when we're able to, but we'll continue to work virtually. More specifically to your question, we have several academic center partners. We work with Indiana, we're working with the Johnson Center, we're working with you, we work with San Diego, we're working with the Lodestar Center, and we could all do collaborative work together. We can publish some research together. We could put all of our students to work. We could set up internships for your people to work in our network. We could deploy them across the 336 agencies to do work in social media, resource development. There's innumerable opportunities that could be put to good use. About 57% of our member network self-identifies as health related. There's opportunities for research around health issues. There's opportunities for research to help organizations understand what could we do to grow philanthropy in the region, helping organizations know who could they ask for more money, understanding using the Foundation Center's directory online. There's innumerable opportunities to put these students to good work. We all have to replace ourselves. And one of the reasons I enjoy so much working at the University of San Diego, I've been there for 7 years now, and I've had over 100 graduate students. And I'm excited about that because I've replaced myself 100 times. And we have 100 students. Any one of them could walk in and take over my post at the Border Philanthropy Partnership tomorrow, because we've taught them the critical skills around cultural competency, around resource development in an international setting. We've taught them how to work in a multicultural setting. And these are the skills that all of your centers have fine-tuned. And it's just about getting these people the opportunity to build their resumes. And I think through collaborative partnerships, we could help them do just that. But I have 100 people following me now, and I'm proud of all of them. And, you know, these are all very talented, smart, dedicated people. One of the things I make them do is an applied project for somebody in the Border Philanthropy Network. We started originally just in San Diego to kind of get our feet wet, but now we open it up anywhere. And they've done projects for Mexico, in Texas, the 10 border states, the 6 Mexican states, the 4 US states. They've done things as far south as Mexico City. They've done projects for international funders in Washington, D.C. It's just been a marvelous experience. And those are the types of things I think we could do with the Bush Center.
That sounds like lots of great opportunities, things for us to explore for sure. Royce, I
Yes.
believe you have your hand up.
I do. Thank you so much, Mary. Mr. Carney, I appreciate you being with us and enjoyed your presentation very much. I actually have 2 questions. The first one, you mentioned earlier, you received some pushback when some nonprofits were wanting to join your organizations, and you explained how that's mutually beneficial. I wonder if that's worked out well for you.
It has. And that's why we've grown to 336 organizations, because you know what we do is you have to be smart. Typically, when you go to these national conferences where there's funders, they always make everybody sign a disclaimer that you're not going to fundraise while you're there. And everybody says, oh, we won't do that. But, you know, so we find ways to learn to get along. But, you know, that was a conversation from 12 years ago, and there was huge concern. But I think we can show, you know, half of our member network today comes from the nonprofit sector. And we're very proud of the contribution they make, because without them, we can't make a difference in our community. They are the glue that holds us all together.
Yeah. Thank you. And the second question, I'm with the Chamber of Commerce in Bryan College Station. I wonder if you work with chambers in the United States, and let me try my Spanish, Cámara de Comercio in Mexico.
Yes, we do. And actually, we just completed 2 studies that would be fascinating to do with the Bush School on charitable giving between the communities in the border. So between Arizona and Sonora, between California and Baja California. Now we need to go do New Mexico and Coahuila and Chihuahua in Texas and Nuevo Leon in Tamaulipas. And that would be a fascinating, we already have a template, we just need partners. So the reason I bring this up to you is because we worked with the chambers of commerce, because we wanted to ask the business community how they engage. And there was also a little hesitancy in the beginning because they thought, hey, you're going to try to, you know, chambers are very protective of their members, as you know, we expect them to be, but we weren't asking them for anything except their opinions. And so we did 2 great studies. I'm happy to share those results with you later. But the chambers were critical partners for the success of those that outreach. So it's a great question. Thank you.
Well, thank you again, and thank you for all the great work you're doing with the 2 countries, bringing them together. Appreciate it.
It's a great honor. So thank you for your support.
Anyone else? Yes, Chuck.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I wonder if you have any thoughts on better solutions to the caravans of migrants that our current administration seems to have curtailed by strong arming the intervening countries. But obviously, many of these people seem to be fleeing from very precarious situations. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about a better long-term way of addressing that.
It's a great question. You know, I have been working in Central and South America my entire professional career. I've been working for over 30 years. The president of El Salvador is actually a dear friend. His father and I worked together. His father was a volunteer for the Kiwanis organization when I was at Kiwanis International. Armando Bukele and I worked together for 15 years, just a terrific fellow. And I learned so much with him and our friends throughout Central and South America. And I think our strategy now is unconscionable. The problem facing Central and South America actually, and I'm a very proud, patriotic American, but the problem started here in our country when we started deporting people that had ties to those countries. We deported them back to their homeland when they had no ties there. And we pulled these people out of the jails in the state of California, and we sent them back to their countries in El Salvador. So the violence that's been wreaking havoc in the Americas is actually, we are complicit. And unfortunately, our country is complicit because we put very bad apples loose in a country that didn't have sufficient rule of law, sufficient authority, police force, military force, legal systems in place to hold them. And it did nothing but create more corruption and violence that is now a problem. And now it's come back to give us more challenges because these migrants are fleeing extreme poverty. There's 4 reasons why people come forward. First and foremost, they need an economic opportunity because I'm not being political, but climate change has absolutely exacerbated their ability to sustain themselves and their family. Through extreme weather conditions, it's destroyed their small family farms for them to actually grow the crops to have a dignified existence amongst themselves. They're fleeing for economic opportunity because they can't survive if they're not supporting their family. They're fleeing violence. And, these situations are avoidable. We know where they're coming from. We know why they're coming. So when we look at the funds we invest as Americans through USAID, I'm a huge fan of the United States Agency for International Development. In our career, public service officials in the State Department do heroic work, working with local communities to actually provide resources for community development. If we would do more of that, we would create an opportunity for more of these people to be able to stay in their home countries and have a dignified existence. They're not looking to become American citizens. They're not looking for free public benefits. They're looking for a dignified existence. They're looking for food on a plate, clothes on their back, a roof over their head, and a job that allows them to care for their family, just like all of us want to do. They're not looking to come here to vote. They're not looking to come here to steal someone's job. They're just coming to have a dignified existence. And so we shut down all those programs. We've zeroed out USAID. We've diminished the budget. We've put people in charge of these programs that are aiming to dismantle them. And I think that's not why we exist. And that certainly isn't the legacy that the Bush School was formed with the launch of the initiative by former President Bush. These are programs we need to restore. These are programs that have huge opportunities to help provide peace and prosperity across the entire Americas and not just here in the United States. So it's a wonderful question. I think we need to get started starting yesterday, and the sooner the better. These are very proud people, and they're very proud to be Guatemalan and Honduran, just like we're proud to be Americans. And they don't want to leave their country, but it's an act of love for themselves and their family to find a better opportunity.
Thank you so much. Obviously, lots of challenges in the region, challenges for the United States, and challenges for figuring out some better ways to respond to them. I think we are out of time. And so regretfully, I am going to say that it is time for us to end and to thank Andy very, very much for the presentation and for the discussion afterwards. I am going to try to pull up just a final slide. This will be on the website again, but you can get further information about the center. And I am so thankful for all of you for joining us today and for thinking about some of these issues with us. Thank you all so much and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.